students, Miss Pavlicek here from the Burlington Science Center, and welcome to Wild Wednesday. Last week, we learned about birds and met some of our birds here at the Science Center. Today, we're going to focus on one specific species of birds. We're going to talk today about owls. Now, owls belong to a group of birds that we call birds of prey or raptors. I want you to think to yourself, what do you think makes a bird a raptor or a bird of prey? And here's a poster with some pictures or examples of different birds of prey. You're going to see hawks, you're going to see owls, you're going to see eagles, and another species called falcons. So what do you think? Well, birds of prey have some identifying characteristics. Number one, they call them birds of prey because that's what they mainly hunt. So we consider owls the opposite of prey. Do you guys know what that's called? That's right, they're called predators. So predators typically have different parts that function in certain ways to help them catch that prey. And we're going to learn about some of those parts and functions here about owls and birds of prey. So to get started, I'm going to use my little friends here. These are not living birds of prey. These are models, or what we call taxidermy. And I have lots of neat things to show you here on the table. So I'm going to do that first for a little while, and then we'll meet our live birds afterwards. So when I teach about owls and birds, we're going to start at the top of the animal and work our way down to the bottom. Now, when you look at this model here, this is an owl called a great horned owl. And I want you to think, why do you think this owl is called the great horned owl? Any ideas? That's right, there are these feathers up here that are shaped like triangles, kind of like horns on the top of their head. Now, does anyone know what these triangular feathers are? Any ideas? Go ahead, take a guess. A lot of you might be saying ears, but these top triangular feathers are not ears. They're simply just feathers, and we call them tufts. Now, the tufts are only on certain owls. They're not on every owl species, and they do serve a function or a purpose. Now, when an owl is sitting somewhere and it's searching for its prey, we'll talk a little bit about how they do that. These tufts are usually in the up position, and when we turn this model around, if I happen to put this piece of wood right next to this model, you're going to see that the round head might make it stick out a little bit. But if we put up the little tufts here and we create a straight line, it helps break up the circularness of the head and allows this owl to blend in with its surroundings. And what do we call when an animal blends in with its surroundings? You got it. Camouflage. So the first thing the tufts do is help break up the shape of the owl to help it camouflage. And then the tufts also can show emotion, kind of like a dog would use for its ears. They raise and lower them. And some scientists believe that they're sensitive to things like wind currents and storms and stuff like that. So that's the owl's tufts. Now, if the tufts aren't the owl's ears, then where are the owl's ears? Let's look on this owl. Do you see any ears? Do owls have ears? You bet they do. They just don't have ears like us. If you all feel this part of your ear here, this is called your lobe. It's actually your external or outside part of your ear. Now, owls don't have earlobes or external parts of their ears. Instead, they have special feathers called the facial disc feathers. And they call them the disc because right here on the side of their head, they make a shape like a disc. It's curved like a circle. And when you look very closely, at those facial disc feathers, look how soft and fluffy they are. What do you think their job is? Their job is just like our earlobes. Our earlobes are here to collect vibrations that bring the sound into the internal part of our ear. And that's exactly what the facial disc feathers do. This one has it too. It helps pull those vibrations into the ear. Now, where is their ear? Well, it's inside their skull. They have tiny little holes. Now, one hole is bigger than the other, and one hole is raised higher than the other on the position of our head. If you look at our ears, our holes, go ahead, stick your fingers in your ear holes. They're in the same position, in the same place on our head. Owls are kind of like this. And I'm going to show you on this skull here. It's really hard to see, but on that side of the skull, you're going to see that big hole right there. And then I'm going to turn it. And on right here, there's a smaller hole, and that's the other owl's ear. And they have the same internal parts or insides that we do. Now, owls mainly hunt by sound. A lot of people think owls and use their eyes, but they mainly hunt by sound, so their hearing is incredible. The snowy owl, which we have pictured here, can hear mice under 1 feet of snow. So something else you might see owls doing, and we'll see this with my owl, is they might move their heads around in circles. People say they're dancing. Can you dance like an owl? Go ahead, dance. Dance. They're not really dancing, it's called triangulation. They're actually moving those ears, the holes up and down to try to locate where that prey is. So pretty amazing. A little bit different ears than we do. All right. Well, when you guys look at an owl, or you see an owl, you can see all these pictures here. We have some of our common owls of New England. We have the saw-whet owl, which is the smallest species. We have the eastern screech owl, which is another small owl. We have the barn owl with an N. We have the barred owl right up here. We have the great horned owl, which is one of the largest all-year resident owls here. We have the snowy owl, beautiful white, that migrates in and out during the winter season to nest on our shores and beach lines. And then the largest owl that migrates down is the great gray owl. Now, when you guys look at an owl, what's the first thing you might think of about their eyes? Woo, they're huge, right? Enormous. Now, owls do have huge eyes, and their eyes do serve some functions. Now, I'm going to show you a model of our eye, and then I'm going to show you a model of an owl's eye, because our eyes are actually quite different. Now, owls do have large eyes, but let's take a look at our eye model. So here we have our eye. Our eyes are kind of round shaped. We have the orange thing in the front. It's called the lens, and the lens helps focus. We have color to our eyes and a dark circle in the center, which is our pupil. Pupil controls the amount of light. And then you're going to notice all these red and blue kind of stringy lines going out the back of our eyes. These are our blood vessels and our nerve. And the nerve and blood vessels help bring blood flow in and out and signal up to our brain. Then you're going to notice these round circles. These are called rods. And the rods are what help us to see in low light situation. And then we have the triangles, which are called cones, that allow us to see color. All right, would you guys like to see the other side? Here we go. Here's the owl's eye. All right, just take a second to think, how is this different from our eyes, from human eyes? What do you notice? What do you see? Well, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's shaped a little bit differently, right? You'll see how this front section with the lens and the pupil, it's much bigger and bulges. The owl doesn't have a circular shaped eye. It's more kind of large in the back and then bulges out in the front. So the shape is different. And then what do you notice about the rods and cones? Are there more rods, or the circles, or are there more cones, which are the triangles? There are more rods. Now, having more rods, having those special cells in your eye allows you to see better in the dark. And owls can see a lot better than we can in the dark, and those very large eyes and those special cells called rods allow them to do that. Now, owls can also see fine during the day. They can see just like we do, but they just have those extra special parts to help them see at night. Now, the other special thing that they have is called a nictitating membrane, and this is a special third eyelid. Now, owls have the same eyelid we do that blinks down. Go ahead, blink down. They have bottom eyelids that close up, which we don't have. And then their third eyelid is called a nictitating membrane. And it's cloudy and white, and it comes from the center of the eye and covers the eye for protection. And this happens when they're grabbing or attacking their prey, also during a storm, or even just to protect the eye during any other reasons. And we'll get to see that on our live owl in just a little bit. All right, so now we're going to move down to the next part of the owl. Let me grab it here. The part of the owl that uses to eat. What do owls use to eat? Any ideas? That's right, they use their beak. Now, I'd like you to observe this model of an owl skull. What do you notice about its beak? It's very sharp, pointy at the end, and it's curved like a hook. Well, their beak is like a special tool, and they use it to hold on to things. They use it almost like an extra appendage, like an arm. They can use it to hold on to move, but they use it mainly to tear apart and rip their food. Now, what kind of things do owls eat? Well, I brought my little box here with owl food. We're going to open it up and take a look and see what kind of things do owls eat. They might eat a bunny rabbit. They might catch little mice. So they love mammals, rodents, chipmunks, squirrels, anything like that. You might even get certain species that will catch fish or a snake. They will eat frogs, crayfish from animals that live in water. And some of the smaller birds of prey love to eat bugs or insects this time of year. So what do we call an animal that only eats meat? Anyone remember? That's right, they're called a carnivore. So they eat a variety of different foods. They'll even eat smaller birds or even other owls. So they're very, very territorial. Now there's another word for their beak. We call it mandible. That would be the separate parts, the top and the bottom. And the one section of the beak I want you to take a special look at, although it's really hard to see. Where did I put my skull here? I want you to look on top of the owl's beak. You're going to see right here these two holes, one on each side, right at the top of the beak. And let's see if I can bring my model closer and we can see those. So if I lift these feathers on the top of the beak, you're going to see these two holes. What do you think these two holes are on the top of the beak? Any idea? Well, the area that they're located, that top part of their beak, is called their cere. Now, do you guys have anything that's kind of near, if you had a beak, two holes? That's right. Your two holes are your nose. Now, owls don't really have a nose, so to say. It's part of their beak. It's located on their cere. But those two holes do the same thing that ours do. Go ahead, close your mouth, and some of you might be saying smell, but it's not smell. Owls actually can't smell at all. That's why one of their favorite meals that they might catch might be a skunk. because they don't smell if they get sprayed. But what it does do is it helps them to breathe. Just like us, they have lungs, and those holes in the cere of their mouth help them to breathe. Now, did you guys notice when I brought this owl up? Look at this mustache. Mustachio. Who's got a mustache here? See all these feathers that are around the beak? Look at them. Those feathers have a special name. They're called the bristle feathers. Can you see that? Bristles. I want you to think, what else in your life, in our world, has bristles? What else? You're right. Toothbrush? Broom? So what is the function of a broom or a toothbrush? They clean. Well, guess what the bristle feathers do for our birds? They clean too. Let's say this owl was eating a nice big meal, a rabbit. Well, when you eat something that's alive, that has blood and body parts and it's gooey, kind of like when we're eating pizza or spaghetti and it gets all over our mouth, we pick up a napkin and we clean. Well, birds can't do that. Those bristle feathers keep that beak clean, and what a bird will do is they'll go up to a branch and they'll rub their beak from side to side like this. It's called feeking. And when they feek, those bristle feathers help brush the top of the beak and keep it clean. So very cool. I'm losing my owl posters over here. All right. All right. Great. Now, the other neat thing that owls have, which are hard to see, is when they open their mouth. Now, when we open our mouth, they have something called papillae. So the papillae help pull that food in without birds having teeth or something to munch or chew on. So it's another fascinating tool that they have in their mouth. All right. So the next part that we're going to talk about with our owls is their most identifying feature, their feathers. Now, we already talked a little bit about their facial disc feathers and their bristle feathers, but these feathers are very different. Obviously, these are the feathers that help them to fly. Now, some of you might call these wings. We can call them wing feathers, but there's a special name for the longer feathers down at the bottom, which help give them flight. These are called primary feathers, meaning primary number one, because that is the number one thing owls do is fly. They fly to get around and move. Even though they do fly, owls only fly, they say, 10% of their lives. 90% of the time, they're sitting and perching. Now, when we look at their primary feathers, they're very, very long and very strong. They have a center part of the feather called the shaft, but owls' feathers, their wing feathers, the primaries, are special to any other bird feathers in the world. And let me show you why. When you look at most bird feathers, the edge of the feather is like a solid straight line. It's a plane. But when we look at an owl's feathers, it has little tiny soft ridges or little lines cut in them. And we call this a fringe. And I'm going to show this to you on the real owl wing. Can you see that fringe? Right at the end, it looks like a soft kind of fluff. Now, this fringe has a special function. When the owl flaps its wings, instead of hearing that flapping noise, it makes the owls completely silent when they fly. Isn't that amazing? So all of that prey doesn't even hear them coming. So an owl will sit really, really still in the tree. They will use their ears. They will use their eyes to look around. And then they will fly down with that silent flight. And right before the end, they use another part to catch their food. Which part is that? Those are called their talons. Now, their talons are really, really sharp and really, really pointy and curved for grabbing or snatching. A great horned owl, which only weighs about 2 pounds, can carry something like a skunk or a raccoon and not really fly up and carry away with it, but they can grab it and catch it and tumble and use it to catch their prey. The gripping power is immense, and they have really strong muscles in those legs. You'll also notice they have feathers that cover their legs all the way down to their feet. And a lot of people don't realize that owls have really long legs because most of the owl, when you see it sitting, is covered by their other feathers. The other feathers are called their coverts. These are kind of the shorter body feathers that we see. And then underneath those feathers, we get the soft fluff. Does anyone know what we call soft, fluffy feathers like this? We have them in our blankets and in our jackets. That's right. They're called down feathers. Down. It keeps them nice and warm. Now, the other thing that we talked about were those talons. And I just want to show you that the birds of prey and the owls have this really big talon in the back. It's called their hallux. And the hallux is the one that does the damage and kind of pierces into the animal and allows it to hold on really well to that prey. So the hallux. All right. Now, the last part of the owl is kind of in the back of the owl. And the last part of the owl is the tail. Now, the tail is very wide when they spread it open, and it has similar feathers to the wings, very strong and long. And does anyone remember from our bird program from last week, what is the function of a tail? That's right, they use them to turn or steer or to balance. So very, very important. Now, one thing you can't see, which is very hard, I can't even show you on the real owls, underneath this tail feather, right here where the tail connects to the body, is something called their preen gland. Can you say that? Preen gland. Does anyone know what it means when a bird preens? Preening means to clean. So what the bird will do is it will use its beak and it will pull that feather through the beak to remove any dirt and dust. It's called preening. And their little preen gland has an oil in it. And what the oil does, any ideas why a bird would be putting oil that's made from its body on its feathers? Any ideas? Well, it's to keep them waterproof. And I'll demonstrate that with my real owl in just a second. So that preen gland has a special oil that helps waterproof owls' feathers. Awesome. Then the last part of the owl's underneath, it's called their cloaca, and that is where the owl goes to the bathroom. And if any of you have seen bird poop on your windows or the cars outside, it comes out in one big pile together. Number 1 and number 2 are together, and it comes out of their cloaca, and it's also where they lay their eggs. Most owl species only lay 1 to 3 eggs at a time, and right now there are owl babies being born, and I got a little baby owl this weekend that had an eye injury and had to go to the wildlife hospital to be taken care of. Now, talking about baby owls, in Burlington I got a phone call 6 years ago for a baby owl that was found in the road. And they put it back near the tree thinking Mom would take care of it. But unfortunately, Mom didn't come back and we couldn't find the nest. And the wildlife specialist decided that it would be okay that I keep this baby owl and raise it. Now, you cannot have an owl as a pet. I know there are movies like Harry Potter out there and some other movies with owls, but you need a special license because they are protected species. And they allowed me to raise this beautiful baby owl. His name is Edison, and we're going to meet him in just a second. So I hope you enjoyed learning about some of our owl parts and functions, and we'll learn a little bit more meeting our owl Edison and our other owl here at the Science Center. I'll be back. Hey there, guys. I would like you to meet Edison the great horned owl. You can see his tufts or his horns up high on his head. We talked a little bit about how those are not ears and they're just feathers. You're going to notice that Edison is very chatty or talkative, and this is because he was raised with human beings. Now, when I got Edison, he was just 10 days old, and taking care of a baby owl is a huge responsibility. But he was raised up around people. I brought him to the science center every day. He even visited classrooms. It was such a great experience. And then Edison needed to learn how to be an owl. Now, working with birds of prey, you can work with them 3 different ways. The first way is you can be a wildlife rehabilitator, which means you take care of injured wildlife. You take care of them when they're sick, and you help get them back out in the wild. Sometimes, unfortunately, they don't make it back to the wild. The second way you can work with birds of prey is through education, just like I do at the Science Center, teaching people all over where you live about these fascinating creatures. And then the third way is called falconry. And falconry is an ancient sport of hunting with birds of prey. So I've trained Edison, and Edison flies to me. We go out at night, and I wear a headlamp, and we go out trying to catch his prey. And I'm basically giving him opportunities to teach and learn what he would have learned from his parents in the wild. Now, great horned owls have the beautiful colored feathers to help them blend in. You can see his tail here, and if I move him back and forth on my glove, you can see him using that tail to balance. Woo-hoo, he's flying away. And you can see those beautiful wings that I talked about. Look how big they are. Gorgeous, gorgeous wings. Now, if we look up closely, you're going to see that curved section around his face, where his ears are. What do we call that again? The facial disc. Very good. And you'll notice how big his eyes are. Hey, there's something weird about owls that people always say to me about turning their head around. How many of you have heard that owls can completely turn their head around in a circle? What do you think? All right, I have my little puppet here. What do you think, Edison? What do you think? Any thoughts? No? Now you're going to see Edison moving his head. Now, an owl looking forward, turning their head around in a complete circle would be 360 degrees. Now, no animal in the world could do that. Their heads would pop off and roll on the floor. You go, ah! You go home screaming, saying, Mom, it's because this exorcist owl and it turned its head and it fell on the floor. No, but I would like you to first try to see how far can you turn your head. Go ahead, turn it as far as you can to one side and as far as you can to the other side. We can turn our heads about halfway from one side to the other, from one shoulder to the other. Thank you, Edison. Whoop, he's trying to go away again. Whoop, come on. Good boy, good boy. Let me just fix his leash here. He's all tangled. Great. But, go ahead. Here we go. Now, we can turn our heads from side to side because we have 7 neck bones or vertebra from the base of our skull to the top of our back. Now, owls can't turn them 360 degrees, but they can turn them 270 degrees, which is almost all the way around, but not quite. And the reason why they can do this is because they have twice the amount of neck bones. 14 neck bones. Their necks are kind of like a little S, and they can swivel and turn really, really far. Now, why do they have to do this? Well, I'd like you to do another test with me. I would like you to keep your head and your neck still. Don't move them, but try to look at the ceiling. Try to look at the floor. Try to look to the right and left of you. Can you do it? Yeah, take a look at my eyes. Let's look closer. See how my eyeballs move in their sockets? We have special muscles that allow them to do that. But owls lack these muscles. Their eyeballs are stuck, fixed in their socket. they cannot move them. So it's kind of like having permanent binoculars. So go ahead and take both hands. I can't use both my hands right now. And do this with both hands. And so your eyes are fixed in straight position. Now look at the ceiling. Now look at the floor. You have to turn your head to see because your eyes are stuck in one position. And that is why owls need to turn their head. They need to turn it to see, and they can't move their eyeballs like we do. Now, I opened up Edison's crate where he hangs out when he's traveling, and he left me a present. Do you want to see it? Look at this present. Whoa, what do you think this is? That's right, it's owl barf. It's not really owl barf, but it's called a pellet. So after the owl eats, its body cannot digest the bones and the fur of that animal that it's eaten. So after a certain amount of time, usually within 12 to 24 hours, that bones and fur will kind of clump into that pellet and the owl will throw up that pellet. And owl pellets are neat because you can identify if you have an owl living in your area, if you find one. And there are certain companies that go out and collect them and they sanitize them, and you can pull that owl pellet apart and see what that owl ate. Let's pull this apart right now and see, what did Edison eat? Anything in here that, oh, well, look at this. And there we have a little tiny mouse bone. Wow, what else do we have in here? Any other bones? Oh, here's another mouse bone. Very, very cool. What do you think, Edison? You want that? No. Very cool. Now, again, great horned owls are one of the larger native species of owls that are found here. Great horned owls can live up to 30, even 40 years in captivity. The longest great horned owl alive in this area was an owl named Spooky, who used to live at the Museum of Science. But usually around 20 years is average if they make it past their first year. Unfortunately, a lot of birds of prey don't make it through their first year of life due to things like poisons that people put outside. They put out poisons to help poison the mouse, and then that mouse runs along eats the poison, and this owl might eat that mouse before it dies from the poison, and then the owl gets the poison and also passes away. It's very, very sad. They also get hit by cars quite frequently and just might deal with other predators. So if they make it past their first year, they can live about 20 to 30 years. Would you guys like to see Edison have a snack? What do you think, Edison? Do you want to fly to the boys and girls? Maybe? I'm going to put Edison back over here on the chair and see if he would like to fly to me for you guys. I'm going to have to take his little leash off here. Yep, he's going to complain about it a little bit. And we'll see if he is hungry enough to fly to me today. All right, Edison. Let's put you over here in this chair. Can you sit there? Good boy. All right, boys and girls, are you ready for Edison to eat the mouse? Here we go. Come on, Edison. Good boy. Yeah. Oh, watch him tear apart that food with that beak. Very good. Someone is hungry today. Awesome. What do you think? Oh, you want more? You want more? Yeah? You want more, buddy? Oh, notice how his tufts are down. He's relaxed while he's eating. And he's still hungry. Now take a look at those. Whoops. Hold on. Let me get Edison back here. Thinks we're doing more flying. Look at those talons. Look how sharp and pointy. Yeah. Now you'll also notice that the owl has an anklet on. That's a piece of leather with these little straps, and those are called jesses. And that's just to hold the owl so it can't get away while I'm handling it. And then I have a leash, just like a dog has a leash. So think of those anklets just like a collar. And then these little straps allow me to put his leash on so he can hang out and not fly away when I need to. There he is, those beautiful wings. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Edison, the great horned owl. Can I ask one last question before we meet our next owl? Can you guys give me an owl sound on the count of 3? Are we ready? 1, 2, 3. If you guys are all hooting, hoo, 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 that is exactly the great horned owl. When you hear an owl noise on TV or in a movie during Halloween time, you hear that classic deep hooting, hoo, hoo, hoo. That is the sound of the great horned owl. You can also see him moving his head a little bit to triangulate to hear. Awesome. Oh, I think there's one last thing I forgot I was going to show you. Waterproofing. So let me show you really quick. Remember how I said those feathers allow the owl to become waterproof? So I'm going to drip this water right on my owl and see what happens. Ready? Woo! All right, besides him not liking a little shower first thing in the morning, did you notice what happened? What happened to that water? It rolled right off of him. Do you see any water left on him? Nope. Perfectly dry and clean. Isn't that amazing? Awesome. Well, thank you, Edison. I look forward to our next hunt together, and we'll go outside and meet our next animal, our owl named Scout the barred owl. See you later. Here I am outside of the BHS cafeteria, and our next owl that we're going to meet, Scout the barred owl, lives here at BHS. During the summer, Scout and Gigi the falcon you met both come home with me, but I'd like to show you her enclosure, and we'll get to meet her and look at some of those different parts and function. Taking care of a bird of prey is quite the responsibility. You'll see here that we have a sign that's saying to keep the dogs off of the sidewalk because it's very stressful for our birds. And we have a fence here that's kind of old and needs some updating, but that keeps visitors, from coming up straight to the barred owl's cage. The part outside the cage is called an security enclosure. So when we go inside, we close that door behind us, and then when we open the cage to the door, there's no chance of escape. And we'll see that it's very tall and slanted. It has a half roof protected from the elements, but then also allows some water and rain and elements to get in. Hi, Scout. Scout's been here for almost as long as Edison, about 5 or 6 years. And Scout is actually taken off the ground, and someone decided to try and raise Scout as a baby themselves, which is illegal, and was brought to the hospital when she sustained an injury inside someone's home. She was also fed the wrong diet, and the Wildlife Hospital gave her to us so that we could keep her here at the Science Center. So let's go inside and meet Scout. All right. So here we are at Scout's cage. There's Scout. Scout is called an eastern barred owl. And barred owls are a medium-sized owl, very common here in Massachusetts. They lack those ear tufts that Edison has. And she very nicely came down, she's talking, came down to her perch. You'll notice that in her enclosure, we have several different heights, widths, and types of perches for her to exercise. Oh, what? Yes. And keep her moving. She also has a shelter hutch so she can get out of the elements, or down low when it's hot, the heat rises to the top so she can stay there. And we have what's called a food chute. So in times of snow, we can't get in the cage. The food just drops through this little tube. And you'll also notice that she is molting. She is changing her feathers for the year, and there's a bunch of feathers on the ground. It looks like she kind of exploded, but she didn't explode. And then of course we use pine needles as bedding because just like most birds, they do go to the bathroom. Hi, Scout. How are you? Oh, I like your noises. Now, barred owls are beautiful. They're called barred owls because on the back of their feathers, it appears that they have bars or almost stripes. They have very long tails, and their eyes appear to be almost all black, but they actually have brown in them. Very cool. And we'll see if Scout wants to come down at all and get her food here. You want to come down, Scout? Oh, maybe we'll put it here on your stump. See if you come down. Oh, right to that stump. She grabbed her food, which is some quail. Hi. You can see the barring that I was talking about on the back of her feathers. She actually loves this front perch and comes out to say hi to visitors. If you are ever here on the weekends or after school hours, you can come up to the fence and say hi to Scout. Keep your respectful distance. And maybe we'll get to watch her eat her meal. I'll back up a little bit and give her some space. Hi, Scout. Yeah. You can see she also has those facial disc feathers, and her beak is very yellow and curved. Nice, Scout. Oh, all right. She's flying around, carrying that food with that foot, her talons. Now, barred owls have a very different call from great horned owls. They actually make a call that sounds like, who cooks for you all. And I'm gonna practice here. So, woo, 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 woo. Awesome. So I'm gonna back up now outside of the cage and we'll see if Scout will go back to eating her food. Well, boys and girls, I hope you liked learning about owls and birds of prey and meeting Edison the great horned owl and Scout the barred owl. I'm gonna leave you with an old poem about owls. There once was an owl who sat in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we be like this wise old bird? Well, I hope you enjoyed Wild Wednesday, boys and girls. This is actually Miss P's last Wild Wednesday of the year. Next week, we will have Mr. Musselman featuring his last Wild Wednesday, and then we will be done for the school year. If you have any questions or you want to email me anything, you know my email. It's Pavlicek, Pavlicek, @bpsk12.org. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.